The rain hammered against the cracked windows of Murphy's diner, each drop creating tiny rivers down the glass that blurred the neon signs across the street. Inside, the warm yellow light cast long shadows between empty booths, and the smell of coffee mixed with the distant hum of the old refrigerator. It was past 10 at night, and the place should have been closed. But old Murphy never seemed to follow his own posted hours. 12-year-old Emma Chen sat in the corner booth, her math homework spread across the sticky table surface. Her mother wouldn't be done with her double shift at the hospital for another 2 hours, and Murphy had long since stopped charging her for the hot chocolate that had gone cold an hour ago. The old man understood what it was like to have nowhere else to go. Emma looked up when she heard the strange humming sound outside. It was different from the usual traffic noise. Deeper somehow. Like the bass note from a church organ that you felt in your chest rather than heard. The diner's fluorescent lights flickered, and Murphy looked up from where he was cleaning glasses behind the counter. "Power lines acting up again," he muttered. But Emma could see the confusion in his weathered face. The humming grew louder, and Emma pressed her nose to the window. Through the rain-streaked glass, she saw lights in the sky that definitely weren't airplanes. They moved too slowly, too deliberately, and they were far too big. As she watched, one of the objects descended toward the empty parking lot behind the strip mall across the street. "Mr. Murphy," Emma whispered, her voice barely audible over the rain. "I think you should see this." The old man shuffled over, his arthritis making each step careful and measured. When he looked where Emma was pointing, his coffee mug slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. The thing that landed in the parking lot was massive, easily the size of 3 city buses placed end to end. Its surface was a dark metal that seemed to absorb the streetlight rather than reflect it, and along its sides, soft blue lights pulsed in a rhythm that reminded Emma of a heartbeat. Steam rose from where it touched the wet asphalt. "Should we call someone?" Murphy asked, his voice shaky. Before Emma could answer, a section of the ship's side opened with a soft hiss, and figures began to emerge. Even through the rain and distance, Emma could see they weren't human. They moved differently, with a fluid grace that spoke of limbs designed for purposes other than walking on 2 legs. Their forms were tall and thin, covered in what looked like form-fitting suits that gleamed wetly in the parking lot lights. Emma counted 12 of them as they moved in formation across the empty lot. They weren't heading toward any of the buildings. Instead, they seemed to be setting up some kind of equipment near their ship. Large, angular devices that hummed with the same frequency as their vessel. "They look cold," Emma said softly. Murphy stared at her. "Cold? Emma, those are aliens." Emma finished for him. "And they've been traveling for who knows how long. Look at how they're moving. They're tired. They're," as if to prove her point. One of the figures stumbled slightly while carrying a piece of equipment. Another immediately moved to help. And Emma could see something almost familiar in the gesture. It reminded her of how her classmates helped each other during particularly difficult group projects. "Mr. Murphy," Emma said, turning away from the window. "How much food do you have?" The old man blinked rapidly. "Food? Emma, we should be calling the police, the military, someone." "They haven't hurt anyone," Emma pointed out. "They're just sitting in an empty parking lot. And they look like they're setting up camp. When was the last time you went camping and weren't hungry afterward?" Murphy looked at the aliens, then at Emma, then back at the aliens. "I've got maybe 40 pounds of frozen hamburger patties, some vegetables, bread." Emma was already moving toward the kitchen. "Then let's make them dinner." What followed was the strangest hour of Emma's young life. She and Murphy worked side by side, cooking burger after burger on the diner's old grill. The smell of cooking meat filled the air, and Emma found herself wondering if aliens could even eat human food. But something about their body language, the way they moved around their equipment with practiced efficiency mixed with obvious exhaustion, convinced her that the gesture mattered more than the specifics. When they had filled 3 large catering trays with hamburgers, fries, and various vegetables Murphy had quickly grilled, Emma looked at the steaming food and felt her first moment of doubt. "Maybe this is crazy," she admitted. Murphy was quiet for a moment, then smiled. "You know, Emma, when I was about your age, my family had just moved to this country. We didn't speak much English, and people weren't always kind to us. But there was this one neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who brought us a casserole every Sunday for 2 months until my mother learned to make American food. He picked up one of the trays. Sometimes crazy is just another word for kind. They loaded the food into Murphy's old pickup truck, along with a large thermos of coffee and another of hot chocolate. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, and Emma could see the aliens more clearly now. They had finished setting up their equipment and were standing in a loose circle around what appeared to be some kind of central device that projected a soft, greenish light upward into the sky. Murphy parked at the edge of the lot, and they sat in the truck for a moment, both suddenly aware of the magnitude of what they were about to do. They might not understand, Murphy said. Or, they might, Emma replied. She opened the truck door. The aliens noticed them immediately. Emma could feel 12 pairs of eyes focusing on her as she and Murphy approached, carrying the trays of food. The aliens were even more impressive up close. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with elongated limbs and faces that were hauntingly beautiful in their alienness. Their skin appeared to be a deep blue-green color, and their large eyes reflected the light from their equipment like pools of liquid silver. Emma stopped about 10 feet away from the nearest alien and set her tray down on the wet asphalt. The smell of the food steamed up between them, and she gestured toward it with what she hoped was a universal sign of offering. "We thought you might be hungry," she said, her voice small in the vast parking lot. The aliens remained still for a moment, and Emma wondered if they could even understand her. Then, slowly, the nearest one approached. It knelt beside the tray, its movements careful and deliberate, and inhaled deeply. When it looked up at Emma, she could have sworn she saw recognition in those silver eyes. The alien said something in a language that sounded like wind chimes mixed with running water. Then it gestured to the others, who approached cautiously. Soon, all 12 aliens were kneeling around the trays, eating the hamburgers with obvious appreciation. They held the food carefully, as if it were precious. And Emma noticed that they shared everything equally, making sure each member of their group got the same amount. One of the aliens, slightly smaller than the others, approached Emma with something in its long-fingered hands. It was a small device that projected a holographic image of what appeared to be a star map. The alien pointed to a distant cluster of lights, then to itself, then to Emma. Somehow, she understood that it was trying to tell her where they came from. Emma smiled and pointed to herself, then to the diner, then made a gesture she hoped indicated home. The alien made a sound that might have been laughter, a musical trill that seemed to dance on the night air. For the next hour, Emma and Murphy sat with the aliens as they finished their meal. Communication was limited to gestures and expressions, but somehow, it felt natural. The aliens showed them more star maps, what appeared to be pictures of their ship's journey, and images of other worlds they had visited. Emma showed them her math homework, which seemed to fascinate them greatly, and Murphy shared pictures from his wallet of his grandchildren. When the meal was finished, the aliens carefully cleaned the trays and returned them to Murphy with what were clearly expressions of gratitude. The leader of the group, distinguished by slightly more elaborate markings on its suit, approached Emma and pressed something small and warm into her hand. Looking down, Emma saw that it was a small crystalline object that glowed with the same greenish light as their equipment. When she held it up, the light pulsed gently, like a captured star. The alien leader spoke again in its musical language. And though Emma couldn't understand the words, the tone conveyed something that made her chest tight with emotion. It sounded like a promise. As Emma and Murphy drove back to the diner, Emma kept looking back at the aliens, who had returned to their equipment, but seemed somehow different now, less isolated, less alone. "Think we'll see them again?" Murphy asked. Emma clutched the crystal in her hand, feeling its warm pulse against her palm. "I think they're not done with their mission yet. Whatever they're doing with that equipment, they're waiting for something." Neither of them could have imagined that Emma was right, or that by morning, their simple act of kindness would set in motion events that would change everything humanity thought it knew about their place in the universe. As they pulled into the diner's parking lot, Emma looked up at the sky and noticed something she hadn't seen before. Stars were appearing between the clouds, more stars than she had ever seen over the city, and among them, barely visible, were tiny points of light that moved with purpose against the static background of space. The crystal in her hand pulsed brighter, and Emma had the strange feeling that somewhere far above, important decisions were being made. Decisions that would very soon involve a 12-year-old girl who had done nothing more extraordinary than offer dinner to strangers on a rainy night. But sometimes, as Murphy had said, kindness was just another word for extraordinary. Emma woke to her mother, shaking her gently, sunlight streaming through the apartment windows in golden bars across her bedroom floor. The crystal from the night before sat on her nightstand, still glowing with that soft greenish light, though it seemed dimmer in the morning sunshine. "Emma, honey, you need to see this," her mother said, and there was something in Dr. Sarah Chen's voice that Emma had never heard before. A mixture of wonder and worry that made Emma's stomach clench with sudden anxiety. Emma followed her mother to the living room, where the television was broadcasting what appeared to be every news channel simultaneously. The same images played across multiple windows on the screen. Aerial shots of the strip mall parking lot, where Emma and Murphy had shared dinner with the aliens the night before. Except now, it wasn't just one ship. Dozens of the dark, sleek vessels filled the parking lot and spilled into the surrounding area. They were arranged in perfect geometric patterns, and from each one, groups of the tall, blue-green aliens moved with purposeful coordination. Above them, more ships hung in the sky like dark clouds, their blue lights creating an aurora effect against the morning sky. Officials are calling it the largest confirmed extraterrestrial contact event in human history, the news anchor was saying, her voice struggling to maintain professional calm. The ships began arriving approximately 6 hours ago, all converging on this location in what appears to be a coordinated operation. Military units are establishing a perimeter, but the aliens have made no aggressive moves. Emma's mother turned to her with wide eyes. "Emma," Mr. Murphy called this morning. "He said you were with him last night when the first ship landed. He said you—" She paused, looking at the crystal on the coffee table where Emma had placed it. "He said you fed them?" Before Emma could answer, the crystal began to pulse more rapidly, its light shifting from green to a deep blue. At the same time, every television in the building began to emit a soft harmonic tone, the same musical language Emma had heard the night before. Then, impossibly, the sound formed words. "Emma Chen, please come to the meeting place. Your presence is requested for consultation." Emma's mother grabbed her hand. "No, absolutely not. You're 12 years old, and I don't care if aliens specifically asked for you. You're not going anywhere near that." The television screen flickered, and suddenly Emma was looking at the alien who had given her the crystal. It stood in what appeared to be the interior of one of the ships, surrounded by complex holographic displays that showed star maps and data streams Emma couldn't begin to understand. "Dr. Chen," the alien said, and its voice was perfectly clear now, though it still carried that musical quality. "I am Resonance of Distant Stars, primary navigator of the long survey expedition. Your daughter performed an act that has significant implications for both our species. She is in no danger, but her insights are crucial to preventing a serious misunderstanding." Sarah Chen stared at the screen. "You're talking directly to me, through my television. You know my name, my profession. We have been monitoring your communication network since our arrival last night. We needed to understand your social structures before proceeding." Emma's gesture of welcome was unexpected. "It requires careful evaluation." Emma stepped forward. "What do you mean? I just brought you dinner. You looked hungry." The alien's large silver eyes seemed to focus directly on her through the screen. "Emma Chen, in the 3,000 years that my people have been conducting surveys of emerging civilizations, no member of a species under first contact protocols has ever offered sustenance to a survey team. The implications are being debated by 2 entire battle fleets currently holding position above your world." The camera view shifted, showing an aerial perspective that made Emma's legs feel weak. High above the earth, barely visible as points of light, were formations of ships, hundreds of them, arranged in 2 distinct groups, facing each other across the space above her planet. "Battle fleets?" Sarah whispered. "The Concordat of Unified Worlds maintains strict protocols for first contact with emerging civilizations," Resonance of Distant Stars explained. Survey teams document technological and social development, but maintain complete isolation. Any deviation from this protocol is considered evidence of either survey team contamination or aggressive intent from the emerging species. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Aggressive intent? But I was just being nice. Yes, this is the source of the debate. Admiral Swift Current, through nebulae of the 3rd Concordat Fleet, believes that your approach to our survey team indicates human infiltration of Concordat security protocols. She argues that no truly primitive species could have known our location or purpose. On the screen, the view shifted to show a massive ship, easily 10 times the size of the survey vessels, bristling with weapon arrays that glowed with ominous energy. Admiral Bright Echo, of Ancient Song of the 5th Concordat Fleet, disagrees. She believes that your action demonstrates a level of social evolution that exceeds our predictive models for species at your technological development level. She argues that immediate integration protocols should be initiated. Another massive ship appeared on screen. This one sleek and graceful, with curved surfaces that seemed to bend light around them. Integration protocols? Sarah asked. Full induction into the Concordat. Immediate transfer of technology. Social restructuring. Assignment of a governing council. Your species would effectively cease to exist as an independent entity. Emma stared at the screen, her mind racing. And the first option? Sterilization. Complete removal of human civilization as a security threat. The silence in the apartment was deafening. Emma could hear her own heartbeat in her ears, and she noticed her mother's hands were shaking. There is a third option. Resonance of distant stars continued. It is why your presence is requested. A formal presentation to both admirals, explaining the motivation behind your action. If they accept that your gesture was truly spontaneous kindness, without ulterior motive or external knowledge, it would establish a new category of first contact protocol. Your species would be granted continued independence while being placed under Concordat protection as a developing civilization of exceptional social merit. Emma looked at her mother, then back at the screen. And if I don't go? The admirals will be forced to choose between the two existing options. Based on current tactical assessments, Admiral Swift Current, through Nebula's position, is mathematically more defensible. Sarah Chen closed her eyes. And when she opened them, Emma could see the doctor and her mother had taken over. The calm, analytical person who made life and death decisions every day in the emergency room. What guarantees do we have for Emma's safety? My personal assurance, and the fact that harming a child who offered kindness would validate Admiral Swift Current through Nebula's position. Emma Chen will be protected by every member of my survey team with our lives. Emma stood up. I'll go. Emma. No. Her mother grabbed her arm. You don't understand what you're agreeing to. Mom, I do understand. Emma pulled up the news footage on her phone, showing the two massive fleets facing each other high above the Earth. If I don't go, everyone on the planet is in danger. And if I do go, maybe I can help them understand that sometimes people are just nice without wanting anything back. The alien on the screen made a sound that Emma had learned the night before was their version of approval. The meeting will take place in 1 of your hours. Emma Chen, you should know that representatives from 47 Concordat member species will be observing this exchange. Your words will be translated into 412 different languages and archived in the Concordat historical database. The outcome will affect not only your species, but potentially the first contact protocols for all future encounters with emerging civilizations. Emma felt the weight of that statement settle on her shoulders. She was 12 years old, and somehow the future of humanity depended on her ability to explain that she had seen tired, hungry strangers and decided to help them. Can Mr. Murphy come with me? She asked. He helped cook the food. If he wishes, his perspective would be valuable. 20 minutes later, Emma and her mother were in Murphy's pickup truck, driving toward what had become the most closely watched location on Earth. Military helicopters circled overhead, and roadblocks had been established in a wide perimeter around the area. But when they reached the checkpoint, the soldiers simply waved them through after checking Emma's identification. They're expecting you, one of the soldiers said, and Emma could see the disbelief in his eyes as he looked at her. "You're really the kid who fed the aliens?" "I guess," Emma replied, and the soldier shook his head in amazement. The strip mall parking lot had been completely transformed. The alien ships were arranged in a complex pattern that seemed to pulse with meaning. And in the center, a large structure had been erected that looked like a crystalline amphitheater. Aliens moved in organized groups around the perimeter, and Emma could see humans in military uniforms maintaining a respectful distance. As they approached the central structure, Emma could make out individual figures inside it. At the far end sat two aliens, who were clearly different from the others. One was covered in armor that seemed to be made of liquid starlight, while the other wore robes that shifted color like oil on water. Even from a distance, Emma could sense the power and authority radiating from them. Resonance of distant stars met them at the entrance to the structure. Up close, in full daylight, Emma could see details she had missed the night before. The alien's skin had intricate patterns that seemed to shift and flow, and there were markings on its forehead that glowed with the same light as the crystal Emma still carried. "Emma Chen, you honor us with your presence," the alien said formally. "Before we proceed, you should understand that this conversation will determine the relationship between your species and the greater galactic community for generations to come." Emma looked up at the towering figure, then at her mother's frightened face, then at Murphy, who had arrived just behind them and was staring at the assembled aliens with wonder and terror. "Will you translate exactly what I say?" she asked. "Even if it sounds simple or childish?" "Every word, precisely as spoken." Emma nodded and walked toward the center of the amphitheater, where two of the most powerful beings in the galaxy waited to hear her explanation for an act of simple human kindness. Behind her, she could feel the weight of countless eyes watching, both alien and human, as the future of her species hung in the balance. The crystal in her pocket pulsed once, warmly, like encouragement. Emma took a deep breath and stepped forward to address two admirals who commanded fleets capable of erasing civilizations, ready to explain why a 12-year-old girl had offered hamburgers to strangers on a rainy night. The crystalline amphitheater fell silent as Emma approached the center. She could feel hundreds of alien eyes watching her every step, and through the transparent walls, she could see human military personnel and news crews maintaining their positions at the perimeter. Above them all, invisible but somehow felt, were the two massive fleets waiting in space for her words. Admiral Swift Current through nebulae was even more imposing up close. Her liquid starlight armor seemed to move with its own consciousness, and her eyes were like chips of frozen space. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded fleets across 1,000 worlds. "Human child," she said, and the translation carried undertones of skepticism and barely controlled impatience. "You stand accused of compromising a covert survey operation through unknown means. Explain how a member of a pre-contact species identified and approached a hidden concordate survey team." Admiral Bright Echo of Ancient Song was equally impressive, but in a different way. Her color-shifting robes seemed to contain entire nebulae, and her expression carried what Emma somehow recognized as curiosity mixed with hope. "Young Emma," she said, her voice musical and warm, "you have performed an action that our behavioral model suggested was impossible for your species at this stage of development. Please help us understand the motivations behind your gesture." Emma looked between the two admirals, then out at the assembled crowd of aliens representing dozens of species she couldn't begin to imagine. For a moment, the weight of it all threatened to crush her. Then she remembered Murphy's words about kindness, and her mother's face when she realized Emma was willing to risk everything to protect her world. "I don't think I compromised anything," Emma began, her voice small but clear in the vast space. "And I definitely don't know anything about survey teams or covert operations. I was just doing my homework in Mr. Murphy's diner when your ship landed." She gestured toward Murphy, who stood near the entrance with her mother, both of them pale but determined. "I looked out the window and saw you setting up your equipment in the rain. You all looked tired. Really tired. Like my mom looks when she's been working double shifts at the hospital for days in a row. And you looked cold and hungry." Admiral Swift Current through Nebula's armor rippled with what might have been disdain. "You expect us to believe that you approached a potentially dangerous alien contact based on emotional speculation about our physical state?" "It wasn't speculation," Emma said, feeling a flash of the same determination that had driven her to cook those hamburgers. You were tired and hungry. I could tell because you moved the same way people move when they've been working too hard for too long. One of you stumbled while carrying equipment, and another one immediately went to help. That's what tired people do when they're looking out for each other. She pointed to the alien who had stumbled the night before, who was now standing with resonance of distant stars. He was carrying something that was obviously too heavy for him, but he was trying anyway because it was his job. And when he nearly fell, his teammate didn't hesitate to help, even though it meant he had to put down his own equipment. Admiral Bright Echo of Ancient Song leaned forward. You observed micro-expressions and behavioral patterns to assess our emotional and physical state, I guess? Emma shrugged. I mean, I didn't think about it like that. I just watched how you moved, and it reminded me of how people act when they need help, but are too proud or too focused on their work to ask for it. Resonance of distant stars stepped forward. Admirals. I should note that Emma Chen identified our exhaustion correctly. We had been conducting surveys continuously for 73 standard days without proper rest periods. Why? Emma asked, looking directly at him. What were you surveying that was so important you couldn't take breaks? The silence that followed was profound. Emma could see the two admirals exchange what might have been meaningful looks, and she noticed that many of the other aliens in the amphitheater were shifting in what seemed like discomfort. Resonance of distant stars looked to Admiral Bright Echo of Ancient Song, who gave a subtle gesture of permission. We were documenting evidence of warfare, he said quietly. Your species has been flagged as potentially aggressive due to your global conflicts, weapons development, and resource competition. My team was tasked with gathering evidence to support a recommendation for either sterilization or immediate forced integration before you could develop space travel capabilities. Emma felt her chest tighten. So you were spying on us to decide if we should be wiped out? To determine if your species posed a threat to galactic stability, Admiral Swift Current through Nebulae said coldly. The evidence gathered over 3 months of observation strongly suggested aggressive tendencies that would make you unsuitable for independent development. But then I brought you dinner, Emma said slowly. And that changed something? It broke our predictive models, Admiral Bright Echo of Ancient Song admitted. In 3,000 years of first contact protocols, we have never encountered a species that showed kindness to unknown entities during their technological adolescence. Most species at your development level respond to unfamiliar contact with fear, aggression, or attempts at exploitation. Emma looked around the amphitheater, seeing hundreds of alien faces watching her with expressions she was beginning to recognize as curiosity, skepticism, and something that might have been hope. Maybe you've been looking at us wrong, she said, and her voice carried clearly through the crystal structure. Yeah, humans fight sometimes. We have wars and we do stupid things and we hurt each other. But we also take care of each other. When my neighbor Mrs. Patterson was sick last year, the whole building took turns bringing her food and checking on her. When the big storm hit downtown, strangers helped each other out of flooded cars and shared umbrellas with people they'd never met. Seeing, she walked closer to the two admirals, no longer intimidated by their power. You spent 3 months watching us fight, but did you watch us help each other? Did you see teachers staying late to help struggling students? Did you see doctors working through pandemics to save lives? Did you see people donating money to help strangers in other countries they'll never meet? Admiral Swift Current through Nebulae's armor seemed to dim slightly. Our surveys focus on technological development and military capabilities. Then you missed the most important thing about us, Emma said firmly. Yes. We have problems. Yes. We fight. But most of the time, most of us are trying to take care of each other. We share food, we help neighbors, we adopt stray animals, we send aid to disaster areas, we invent medicines to help sick people we'll never meet. She pulled the crystal from her pocket, where it had been pulsing gently throughout the conversation. Last night, when I saw you in that parking lot, I didn't think aliens or threat or opportunity. I thought people who look like they could use help. Because that's what humans do. When we see someone who needs something and we have something to give, most of us try to give it. Admiral Bright Echo of Ancient Song stood and approached Emma, her robes shifting through colors Emma had no names for. Child, do you understand what you are proposing? You suggest that your species' capacity for spontaneous altruism toward unknown entities represents a form of social evolution that our models did not account for. I'm not proposing anything complicated, Emma said. I'm just telling you that if you want to understand humans, you have to watch what we do when we think nobody important is looking. Don't watch our armies or our weapons. Watch a parent staying up all night with a sick child. Watch teenagers sharing lunch with a classmate who forgot theirs. Watch people stopping to help when someone falls down on the street. She gestured toward Murphy, who was watching from the entrance with tears in his eyes. Mr. Murphy kept his diner open late so I'd have a safe place to do homework while my mom worked double shifts. He never charged me for the hot chocolate. That's not because he's special or different. That's because he's human. And humans take care of each other. Admiral Swift current through nebulae remained silent for a long moment. Her armor cycling through patterns Emma couldn't interpret. And you believe this quality extends to your species' potential interactions with non-human entities? I brought you hamburgers, Emma pointed out. You weren't human, but you looked hungry. It really wasn't more complicated than that. The two admirals moved away from Emma and began what was clearly an intense discussion in their musical language. Around the amphitheater, other aliens joined smaller conversations, and Emma could see data streams flowing between their devices as they consulted databases and predictive models. Resonance of distant stars approached Emma while the deliberations continued. Emma Chen, he said quietly. You should know that your words are being transmitted to the Concordat Council in real time. Representatives from over 300 species are observing this exchange. Are they going to make decisions about other planets based on what I say? Emma asked. Almost certainly. If the admirals accept your explanation, it will establish new protocols for evaluating emerging civilizations. Future survey teams will be required to assess altruistic behaviors, not just technological and military capabilities. Emma felt the weight of that responsibility settle on her shoulders. What if I said the wrong thing? You spoke truth as you understand it. Resonance of distant stars replied. Whether that truth is sufficient to preserve your species' independence remains to be seen. The deliberations continued for nearly an hour. Emma sat on the crystalline floor of the amphitheater, occasionally answering clarifying questions from various alien observers. Her mother and Murphy were allowed to approach, and Murphy confirmed Emma's account of the previous evening, while adding his own perspective on human nature. 40 years I've run that diner, he told the assembled aliens. I've fed cops and criminals, rich folks and homeless folks, local kids and travelers from around the world. Never once have I seen someone look at another person who is hungry and not want to help if they had the means to do it. That's just how we're built. Finally, the two admirals returned to the center of the amphitheater. Admiral Swift Current through Nebulae spoke first. The evidence regarding human altruistic capacity is compelling but not conclusive. However, Admiral Bright Echo of Ancient Song has proposed a solution that addresses my security concerns while acknowledging your species' unique characteristics. Admiral Bright Echo of Ancient Song stepped forward, her robes now showing gentle, warm colors that reminded Emma of sunrise. Emma Chen, your species will be granted independent development status with concordant protection. However, this protection comes with responsibility. Earth will become the first independent altruistic civilization, a new category that requires your species to demonstrate continued social evolution toward interspecies cooperation. Emma blinked. What does that mean exactly? It means, said a new voice from the entrance of the amphitheater, that humanity just became very special. Emma turned to see another alien approaching, this one different from all the others. Where the previous aliens had been tall and graceful, this one was smaller, with features that seemed designed for smiling, though it belonged to no species Emma could identify. I am Keeper of Peaceful Accords, the newcomer said. I oversee diplomatic relations for the Concordat Council. Emma Chen, your conversation with the admirals has been reviewed by the full council. We have voted to establish the Emma protocols. The what now? Emma asked weakly. New first contact procedures named in your honor. When we encounter emerging civilizations in the future, survey teams will be instructed to evaluate not just military and technological development, but capacity for spontaneous kindness toward unknown entities. Your actions have fundamentally changed how we understand social evolution in developing species. The amphitheater filled with musical sounds that Emma realized was applause from dozens of different species. Outside, she could see human military personnel and civilians celebrating as news of the decision spread. Furthermore, Keeper of Peaceful Accords continued. Earth has been invited to establish the first interspecies kindness research center. Your species will study and document altruistic behaviors across the galaxy, helping us better understand how kindness develops in different evolutionary contexts. Emma looked at her mother, who was crying and smiling simultaneously. Then at Murphy, who was shaking his head in amazement. "All because I made some hamburgers?" Emma asked. Admiral Bright echo of ancient song approached Emma one final time. "All because you saw strangers who needed help and chose to help them, expecting nothing in return." That simple act demonstrated a level of social evolution that took most species millennia to achieve. Your civilization is barely beyond your home planet, yet you instinctively extended hospitality to beings you had never seen before. She handed Emma another crystal. This one multifaceted and shifting through colors like a captured rainbow. This is a communication device. When your species is ready to begin formal diplomatic relations with the Concordat, use it to contact us. We estimate that will be within your lifetime, given the accelerated social development your action suggests. As the formal proceedings concluded and the aliens began to pack their equipment, Emma found herself surrounded by reporters and government officials all wanting to hear her story. But she kept thinking about what Admiral Bright echo of ancient song had said about accelerated social development. That evening, as the alien ships departed and the world began to process what had happened, Emma sat in Murphy's diner with her mother, watching the news coverage of humanity's first successful first contact. "You realize," her mother said, "that you're probably going to be in history books forever as the girl who saved humanity by offering food to strangers." Emma sipped her hot chocolate and watched the last of the alien ships disappear into the night sky, their blue lights fading until they looked like particularly bright stars. "Maybe," she said. "But I think the real story is that humans are going to have to figure out how to be as kind to each other as we apparently are to alien visitors. If the whole galaxy is going to be watching us to see if we can really live up to being an altruistic civilization, we're going to have to work pretty hard to deserve that title." Murphy, cleaning glasses behind the counter, chuckled. "Well, if anyone can help us figure that out, I think it's probably the kid who decided to feed tired strangers without asking what planet they came from." Emma smiled and fingered the communication crystal in her pocket. Somewhere among the stars, fleets of ships were carrying the story of a 12-year-old human who had changed galactic policy with hamburgers and kindness. Tomorrow, humanity would wake up to a universe full of possibilities they had never imagined. But tonight, Emma Chen was just a kid doing homework in a warm diner, planning to make sure that when the aliens came back, they would find a species that had learned to be as kind to each other as they were to strangers on rainy nights. Outside, the stars seemed brighter than they had ever been, and each one carried the promise of friends waiting to be met.